I cried alone in my room. I hugged my pillow. Hello guys, welcome. Let me formally introduce myself. My name is Greta Hansi and I am a Nigerian living in Canada, currently living in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada as a permanent resident. Today I'm going to be sharing how I relocated to Canada as a permanent resident, a single applicant. So stay tuned. And for those of you that have been watching my videos I've posted so far and have not yet subscribed, please, what are you waiting for? Kindly subscribe. The subscribe button is there, it's free. Subscribe, like this video, engage with me in the comment section, and share to as many you think will be needing it. So let's just dive right into the story. Now, this journey started formally in 2018. After my service year and all of that, I came back to Lagos and I got a job on the island in Lekki. So I had to leave my parents' house and I was living with my cousin. Then she, knowing about my wishes or my wish to go further my studies, because I had been applying to so many scholarships, she just told me that okay, there's this Canadian thing that is going on. She has been hearing so much about it from her colleagues, and though she doesn't know much, but it's something that she would advise that I look into. I went into researching more about it. So I went on YouTube and I had not been a YouTube person prior to that time. She advised me, why not go on YouTube? I'm sure that there will be lots of information on YouTube. Shout out to my cousin. So I went on YouTube, I started researching, I stumbled on so many videos. I had not been an Instagram person prior to that time. I became very frequent on Instagram and all of that, just so that I could get so many information. I stumbled on Wolo's channel. I stumbled on Marina Isiri's channel later on. In fact, I slept, actually Wolo, Canada Info Hub, I slept on her channel. Like I just kept watching her videos back to back. I binged on her videos because she had so much to share about the relocation journey and all of that. So when I got as much information I knew I needed, I got information about the things to do, the initial things to do, I went into action. The first thing I did was to apply for my WES, just for my certificate to be evaluated. I went to WES, I put in my application, and once I got my reference code, then WES still required WAEC. They were using, you had to also submit your WAEC, and I didn't have time for this, and the money also, because I had just started working, and I was working, my salary was not so much, but God bless my cousin, knowing that, saying that it was something I really wanted to do. Do you know what she did? Because I was living with her, she told me, you know what, in this house, you're not going to buy anything, just save your money and do whatever you want to do. So she basically took up all the expenses for our daily living, the feeding, whatnot in that house, and I was saving the little I was making. I had already put plans in place. This is how much I'll be needing, this is how much I will need to save and all of that. I applied for my WES, and it now got to the time of applying for my transcript. I went to the University of Port Harcourt, and you know how Nigerian schools can get. Thankfully, my younger sister was still in Port Harcourt, so she helped me process my transcripts and whatnot. Then it was now time to go the WAEC way, and that was how I started the WES process. And within then, WES used to take about 3-4 months, I think, not like now that they can take just 7 days. And before you know it, in 2019, my WES evaluation report came back. But before it came back, I had already I started preparing for IELTS. The result came out, though I didn't max out on all the competencies, but it was good enough. It was just like 3 points for speaking, for listening, and 1 point for, I think, writing. That would have made me max out. So by the time these two things, these are the most important things that I needed to get into the pool. By the time my WES evaluation report came out, my IELTS result was out, I created a profile and I joined the pool. Then my score was 434. I remember that exactly. By that time, the express entry had become a popular thing. People now knew about it, and the competition was now very fierce. So the scores had gone very high. The scores at that time was going from 460 to 470, and there wasn't, from the speculations and the analysis, it wasn't possible. There wasn't like a little chance for that score to come down at that time. Now we are going towards the end of 2019. So the end of 2019 before 2020, the French story about the French as giving extra scores came out. So it was now a thing that if you're bilingual, if you have the French competency as well as the English, you could get you could get more than 50 points, like 62, above 62, depending on what you score from the test. And I didn't know French. I could only say bonjour, ça va bien, merci. You know that very popular French we used to know, or basically everyone knows or can say. So I was now torn. So what do I do? Because I had invested so much, my time, study, research, everything. I had invested so much, I did not want to just give up. And so what story do I now have to tell? Then going to study in Canada wasn't really so popular as it is now. It was just the express entry thing I knew about. So what was I going to do? I had to sit down. I knew that, okay, there was the possibility of doing a master's, which I didn't want to do then. I didn't think I would do my master's in Nigeria. And the other possibility was studying French, going to learn French. So I think the very first time I got to hear about this French thing was on Faye Mack's channel. For those of you who know Faye Mack, she's a YouTuber, a Canadian YouTuber. So I decided to put these two things on a scale and just weigh my options. Should I do a master's or should I study French? Now, the good thing about the French, from what I learned, was that it's not that French was going to be a big thing in the Canadian immigration story. And I now thought about it. If I was to do master's, I don't know, because I was nearing my 30, and I know that by the time you get to 30, you start losing points, 5 points, then you clock 31, another 5 points. So what happens if the master's doesn't give me a high enough score? But for the French, it can give me these 62 points, and also there are some provinces that accept people that do French. So I had to settle for going to study French. It wasn't an easy decision. I started it early January 2020, I think exactly on the 10th of January 2020. I went to Alliance Française, I registered, and I started my test. The first month, it was interesting, you're learning French, you will soon start to speak French. But gradually, I started getting tired. But I knew that I wasn't going to stop, because you don't invest so much now. I invested so much, so I just had to continue going. Then COVID happened. In March, April, the lockdown started, so we had to stay at home. And I had just finished the very first, the sessions were broken down. I remember when I applied for the French and they told me that, okay, we have, instead of A1, A2, B1, B2. Alliance Française at ECO, you broke it down to A1.1, A1.2, A2.1, A2. And I was telling myself, Haba, why will I take a whole year? I thought it was just something that I would do within 6 months, and I get the French score I need, and I enter the pool with that score, or I add it to what I already have in the pool. And before you know, I was just thinking, within 6 months, I'll get this thing. And when they told me, I was like, oh, a year is too much. I was already thinking of a way out to just go without doing that 1 year. So, okay, let me just start. Let me see how it goes. I didn't know that what was waiting for me in front was even going to be more than that, a year. But I started. COVID happened, the lockdown happened. I had just finished A1.1. I was supposed to start I had paid for A1.2. Yeah, I paid for it. So because we had paid for that, the next session, they took the classes online. But you know how then we had just started this online way of life, and it wasn't very effective. I was doing self-study. I had a test, and a soft copy test book that someone shared, and I was using that one to study. I was working online. I was also doing this class online. It wasn't as effective, knowing that I was not a native speaker. I was just learning the language, but the little we could do, we did it. Then fast forward to the end of January, September, October, we had started going out. The lockdown had been lifted. We had started going to work and all of that. But because of the peculiar situation of my household, myself and my cousin I was living with, I couldn't take the risk of going to be among so many people just to protect our health. And so I couldn't resume back with the physical classes at Alliance Française. And though they gave me a grace period, I think a year to come back and still have the the possibility of using that payment I had made before the lockdown, but I didn't go back. And I tried to do self-study at home and with the material, but you know how it can be learning a language that is not yours, learning all by yourself with no accountability partner, with no not much resources that I had then. So that zeal, gradually it was there, but it soon just declined, and I wasn't putting so much passion into it again. I was using Duolingo then, and Duolingo I enjoyed it, but I soon found out that I wasn't really giving much attention to Duolingo anymore, and then life happened. Then my cousin had left me. I was still in that house. Then I had to gradually I didn't lose interest. I was still studying once in a while, but it wasn't so like an everyday thing. I know learning a language, you need to study every day, you need to work at it every day so that you could get the very best. So that was how that one just died down like that. But I was now doing other things. I went back to applying for scholarships and all of that. I got back to scholarship, but they were partial. I had to pay some certain amount, and I didn't have that money. So that was how life went on until late 2001, when between 2021, when there was now speculation that they will resume the draws, because there had been a pause on the draws because of the COVID situation. So there was now a speculation that by mid 2022 they were going to resume back with the draws. Then of course everybody knew, if people that were on the journey, it was like, because on this journey you will just be doing permutation and combination, like if I do one like this, maybe it could work like this, if I not do one like this. So you will just be putting things together to just plan and analyzing and whatnot. So people analyzing knew that had done so much analysis knew that the scores would be so high by the time the draws come back. So what I did was, by late 2021, I knew that I didn't want to miss out. After all the energy I had put in, I had to plan to go back to give more attention to my French learning and just see how I can take the test by 2022. So by 2021, before close to the end of 2021, I had gotten like a side hustle giving me more money, even more than I was earning as per my salary. So as regards finance, things were settled then. I put plans into action, and by January of 2022, I got a private tutor that would bring me back to my French journey. Then the self-studying helped. So I had gotten to by the time he tested me, he saw that I was like on the B1 level. I had just my leg was just hanging on the B1 level, and that was how we started classes. But the French teacher or the French tutor turned out he cheated me. That's what I would say. But by April 2022, there's this Telegram group that I had always belonged to, but I never gave attention to it. Like even early 2020, I would see them drop studies. They were doing evening classes and all of that. I never really paid attention to it. Why? Even though I knew that messages were dropping, most times I would look at the messages, but I took it for granted. But by that March, April 2022, when I saw that this French teacher wasn't giving me what I really wanted, I went back to that group. One night I just said, okay, let me join this group and see what's going on here. And I joined that night. I saw that something good was going on here. The following night I joined, I got something worth the while. I said, like, they were speaking and all of that. I was like, oh my goodness, I've always been on this group, this Telegram group, and I never took I took it for granted. And now this is how I started joining the classes night after night, and I started I networked with people. I started gisting with most of these people, having private chats with them. And one night I just asked if anyone knew any private tutor that was very good and that could take me on virtual classes. And there was this guy who now directed me to the French teacher that now took me all through the time till I wrote my exam. God bless you, Madam Agatha. And that was how I started with this lady. We started having daily sessions. I think some days we just had going through my writing, other days to be us having speaking sessions. I was paying monthly. Guys, I spent money, but let's go on. She was good, but because my level was still low, so it was now we're doing like a 2-in-1 thing. She was preparing me for the TEF exam, and while she was also teaching me the French language, like improving my skills as regards the French language. We went on and on like that. I started these classes in I think in May 2022, and I had this goal of writing the exam probably in September or October. But when I saw that I wasn't really at that point where it was like she was very open with me. Like she would say, Greater, I don't think you should write this exam, and she would tell me the way it is, and I really appreciated her for that. So by September, taking the test wasn't possible, and even before that September, the TEP exam was suspended. I don't know what happened, but it was suspended, I think in June or July. So that now that was a very discouraging period for myself and another lady that I met on that group, and we were having classes together. Thanks to that lady, we started making research. In fact, not thanks to her, because by myself, I was working and having my side hustle and my learning French at night. It wasn't an easy thing for me, and because the draws were coming up and we're starting again in July, I had to take another IELTS test because the very first one that I took in 2019 had expired, so I was out of the pool by this time. So what I did, in order not to clash with my English and French speaking, I had to pause the French and I took the IELTS test. I took the computer-based test. The score, again, I didn't max out, but I just said, okay, let me do the French first and see what I have. If I have to take the IELTS again, I would take it again. So when the TEF test was suspended, we had to make research on what to do. At some point, we were like, okay, maybe if we're ready, I would go to Cotonou. Myself and Daddy will go to Cotonou to write the French test. But again, it wasn't really going to work out, so we had to go to the other test, TCF, which wasn't popular in Nigeria as at that time because everybody knew just TEF is easier than TCF and all of that. That was the mentality that we had, and we just ran with it. So by the time we made research, that lady, she just kept reaching out to people and all of that, and that was how she got so many tips and tricks about the TCF exam. And she said, Greater, why not let's take this TCF exam? And I asked her, how is it and all of that. She explained to me. I said, okay, you know what, I'm in for it. So I went back to my tutor and I told her that I would want to take the TCF exam. Prior to that time, she told me that her students have always been the TEF student, so she had never taken anyone in TCF, but it was, of course, she knew the French language and it was something that she was willing to do. So what she herself did was she now had to go research about the TCF exam, and she said, okay, this is what she sent me materials. That my lady that I also met on the Telegram group was also sending me TCF materials, and that was how we started practicing for the TCF exam, while she was also still trying to correct me and all of that. I know some days I would speak like this, and I would ask her, how is it? She would say, you know what, you just have to do this, you just have to do this. One day she now asked me, do you have someone you practice with? At that point I knew that, oh god, my speaking is whack, because I knew that I was speaking jargons. And thankfully, myself and this other lady that was also planning to take the exam, she had her own tutor. We now formed a group where we would meet every night. We didn't know what we were speaking, but we were just speaking. Fast forward, we practiced and practiced, and by this time I had planned to take my first test, the TCF test, because I planned to just take it once in December of 2022. But I knew that December would be a busy time for me at work, so I asked my tutor if she thought it was possible for me to take it in November, and she told me that let's look at it. It was September by this time. Then by early October, I put in the work. I worked to improve my speaking, because at this time it was speaking that was giving me issues. I worked to improve my speaking. In another video, I would give, for those of you that would want to go the French way, or for those of you that already studying the French language, I'll give you tips and tricks on how to go, just from my little knowledge. Not that, okay, it's cast in stone, just from my little knowledge on the things I had to do as regards studying the French language. So I put in the work, and by November she said, Greater, I think you're okay. And I was still doubting myself. She told me, I said you are okay. And that was how, because at that time the TCF exam or test was only written in Port Harcourt, paper-based. So I had to plan to travel to Port Harcourt, and about almost a month later, the result came out. Now, just like you have the IELTS where you need to max to a certain score to get a favorable score, it's the same thing with French. So now the grades it's graded into A1, A2, B1, B2, C1, C2. Now to get that maximum score, that extra 50 points from French to help you improve your scores, you need to get B2 on all the French competencies. And now in French they have what they call the low B2 and the high B2. So I got B2 for all the competencies, but my listening now gave me a low B2. So it was B2 all round. I was very happy until I got to understand, until I went to put my score on the on my profile. I went to include it in my profile, and I saw that I wasn't getting that extra point. I was wondering why. That was when I went to do research, and I discovered that there was something called low B2 and high B2. At this point, I was devastated. My joy was cut short. So I picked myself up. In my own case, I could not apply for a remark because of the competency that was affected. I picked up myself. I said, okay, in the new year, I would go right again. Then by January, they had started the test in Lagos. It was a good one. It was computer-based and all. So we learned the tips and tricks and how to go about it. And I studied very well, but I was scared. So I had to now register for February. February came, I went to write the test. And 2 weeks later, the result came out, and lo and behold, I got a 9 in the writing. Guys, I cried. I wept. I stabbed myself. I remember one guy that wrote the exam with me. I don't know if you watched this video. He also didn't get a good score, but he knew I was devastated. I think he didn't live in Lagos. He called me, and when he heard my voice, he was now consoling me. And he didn't get this. We got the same 9.9, which wasn't a good score, but he was now consoling me. Guys, I cried alone in my room. I hugged my pillow. But thankfully my younger sister knew I wrote the test, so she called, she would talk to me and all of that. Guys, I was depressed. Yeah, I was depressed because I had to apply for a remark, and the remark is not like IELTS remark. IELTS remark, I think now it costs 35,000 naira. French remark costs 70,000 naira, and once that test comes back negative, you will lose your 70,000 naira. So I thought about what I did. I said, no, I did well. I answered the questions well and all of that. I went back. I reflected on how the exam day went. Then I applied for the remark. I followed up and followed up. It took almost a month before that remark came back. The guy also applied for a remark, and he got his remark feedback back in 4 days, and it changed. His score was increased, and mine took a month. I kept following up, and by the end of the day, I had to write to France. Then France told me that they had already given Lagos the report of my remark. Then Lagos now reached out to me that it came back unchanged. Oh no. And I went to the back of the building of my office to cry out. I cried. I couldn't do anything again, even to pray. My sister would call me every night for about 2 weeks and pray in my ears, whether I respond to her or I don't respond to her. I was devastated. I was tired. I had put in so much from 2018. At this point, I was like, what is going on? But God, I prayed to you before I went into this journey. I had to go back to say, probably you didn't tell me anything. But by the time I recovered, guys, yes, I recovered. And I told myself, you know what? Probably, yes, you heard from God, but have you totally given all to God? I just say, God, you know what? Just take all. I am not doing it again. However this thing turns out. Maybe finally, you don't want me to go on this journey. But you know what? At this point, I was done. Again, I had said, how will I give up like that? I don't give up easily. So I didn't tell anyone. I didn't tell my sister. The second exam that I didn't pass, it was my sister that paid. But this time around, I didn't tell anybody. The money I had, I put everything together and I registered for another exam. About 7 days later, I just got an email. I had to return back to my house. I remember clearly, I was doing my laundry. I went inside to get something, and I just saw that a mail had come in from Alliance Francaise, my result. Oh God, I started shaking. Then I opened it, and the next thing I saw was a 9. Remember, I had said that anything in 9, it spoils the whole result. Like, it just limits you from having that extra 50 points. And the first question I asked myself was, where is this 9 coming from? And I took a closer look at it and I saw that it was my speaking. The other 2 exams tests I had done, the first one I was even scared of, I did in November 2022. I got a 13 in my speaking. The second one I did in February, I got a 12 in my speaking. So and I put in more effort in my speaking, in fact, in all the competencies. Where is this 9 coming from, the speaking? At this point, because I didn't want to lose my mind, guys, I said I had given all to God. I went down on my knees right there and there, and I worshipped God. But I don't know where the strength came from to worship God in the midst of that pain. After worshiping and praying, I stood up. I went to finish my laundry. I came back. It was like this holy anger was in me. I sat down. I reflected on how my speaking went. I knew that I did well. It was June 12th. It was a holiday. So I reached out to the lady. She responded that it was a holiday, but once I make the payment and I fill the form, that they'll begin the process. 13 days after I submitted, I reached out to her. They would usually tell you that it takes about a month. I reached out to her and she now reminded me. I didn't count the days. She was the one that told me that it's 13 days just after you applied, and it usually takes 30 days. And I told myself, you know what, Greta, you're not going to ask this lady for this result again until the 30th day. But by this time, I had left everything to God. Then, guys, this story I'm telling you, like, I would never forget it. I remember on the 19th day, I was at work that day. From the morning I got to the office, I just had this mind, write to these people, write to France to follow up. You don't know what is going on, just write to France. I said, I have told myself I'm not going to write to these people again till it's 30 days. Then by lunchtime, I had told someone, come and stay in my office. I wanted to go have lunch. But I was so restless till I wrote this mail. I didn't send it. I left my phone. While I was going to eat, the Spirit said, go and send that email. I just took my phone. I went under the staircase at my office, and I was going to pray about that mail I wanted to send. And the next word I heard was, haven't I commanded you to be strong and courageous? Guys, that was the word I heard. Have I not commanded you to be strong and courageous? From that moment till now, that passage of the Bible, Joshua 1:8, is like an anthem for me. I did not argue anymore. Bam! I hit the send button, and that was how I sent that email. I went to have my lunch. I didn't think about it again. Till the following day, I didn't even dwell on it. I just said, I have sent it. God take control. The following day, I was on my way back from work. I was already in my estate heading home. I was on the phone with my sister, and I just picked up. I had my earpiece on. I carried my phone to sit just to check something, and I saw a mail had dropped. By this time, of course, my emotions were just roaring, and I just decided to check from the notification bar, and I dragged it down, and what I saw was an email from the French lady here that was at Ikoyi. Greta, I am happy to inform you. That happy to inform you I saw, I lost all composure. I just started screaming. I don't know how I managed to walk home because my legs were shaking. Well, I got home, and again, I worshipped. I went to worship my Creator. And 2 days after that, I had to include that score in my already existing poll, because by that time I had 420 something. Yeah, I had lost so many points due to my age. And by the time I included that French test, my score had gone up to 486. But by this time, before this time, they had started category-based draws. So they had category-based draw for healthcare, for French. They had French draws for people that are bilingual. But by this time, I had the advantage of both the healthcare draw, because of what I was doing, working as an instructor of persons with disabilities, and I also had, so if not getting from the healthcare draws, I would have gotten from the French draws, because the scores were very high, 500, and I didn't know how to get to 500, but the category-based draws were also going to work for me. So 2 days after my French results came, my French feedback came out, I got my invitation to apply. There was a healthcare draw, and I got my invitation to apply. The following day, there was a French draw. So if I had not gotten from the healthcare draw, I would have gotten from the French draws. Guys, that was how a journey that started in 2018 began to manifest. From the day I submitted it took just 1 month and 4 days for my ready for visa email, the passport request email, which means that my application has been approved. I just need to submit my passport for them to give me my visa, and then everything would be sealed up. It just took 1 month and 4 days. So a journey of 4 years took 1 month and 4 days from the time I submitted. Guys, that was how mercy came in and rewrote my story.